Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Poke Check podcast. This is episode 11, and I'm very excited this morning because I get to interview my favorite breaker on YouTube, somebody whose positivity is infectious, and someone who adds a little bit of math in their videos too, which makes it a little extra exciting, and has the goalie mojo, which, if you look behind me, I'm all about the goalie mojo. So, FultonCards, welcome to the podcast. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay. I'm happy and elated to join you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad to get the opportunity to talk to you. It's been a while coming because when I got this thing started a little over 6 months ago, I thought if there's anybody on YouTube, like a YouTube, I don't want to say personality, but somebody who's a prominent figure in the hockey collecting community on YouTube, you'd be the first one because if anybody's seen your videos, you bring a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of positivity to your videos when you're opening boxes. And that's probably, if anybody were to ask, like, what's the most popular sports card type of video on YouTube, I think most people would say box breaks. You know, everybody watches case breaks and group breakers and all that stuff, which, you know, everybody likes those for the most part. But I'm more into like finding collectors that just love collecting. And even though you do a little bit of mail days, like at the end or the beginning of your videos, it's mostly about opening cards. And yeah, they're always fun. Enjoy them, man. Reminds me of opening cards as a kid. So I thought I would get you on here and talk about it. But
Thanks,
kind of,
man. I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
within my heart and within my soul, I really haven't matured much. That kid from the '70s and '80s is in me, infectious, and I give him all the time of day.
That's great. That's great. I was having a conversation with somebody a couple days ago who said, like, we're all kids at heart still anyway. And it's like, yeah, it's better just to embrace it, you know? So kind of curious. I mean, you for people who haven't seen your videos, you're a big fan of Montreal Canadiens, right? Is that where the passion for collecting came from? You know, from growing up as a Canadiens fan, or was there a different path to that?
Well, I think it's fair to say if you grew up in Montreal, if you grew up in Quebec in particular, and you grew up with Larry Robinson, Serge Bard, and Lapointe, and Dryden as your defensive core, and
Right.
that's not even getting to the best players. Growing up with Guy Lafleur, we had the parade route, mapped out. We knew exactly where it was. When people would talk, "Oh, where's the parade this year?" People would say, "Oh, it's the normal route or it's the usual route." So, it made it very, very winning is very helpful, of course, to join the hobby, to join a city's,
Yes.
love and jubilance. So it's definitely that. The other part to it was probably, my dad wasn't great. He was very emotional. He was violent at times. He wasn't, there's a lot of sort of strife and difficulty within home. I have three siblings, and my mom, who went back to school to have the financial autonomy to not have to deal with him. She came from an era where you don't get divorced. She grew up watching Maurice Richard. In fact, got her first television that her 5'2" war-torn dad, who was beaten up at the hands of his own army by the Bolsheviks and escaped via Odessa, of all places, in Ukraine. He lugged up their first television because these three little girls were jumping on the bed, listening to the radio and listening to Rocket Richard, and they started watching the game next door at the Shyster's house, who had it. The only guy on the block who had a television was someone who ripped it off because it's the ghetto of Montreal back then. So they said, "We won't go next door to the Shysters anymore, but you have to get a television." So he saved up all his money, finally lugged this massive wooden television up the stairs. And my mom grew up watching Rocket Richard and studying, the newspaper numbers, all the stats and stuff. And here
Mm.
you go, when I'm a kid, she knew absolutely everything about the Montreal Canadiens and their rich history. And we would escape. I would started playing hockey. She would escape, and we would escape to the arena to get out of the house. And watching the game on Saturdays was obviously before, you have day games on television during the week.
Mhm.
I would escape to play hockey, and we would escape on Saturdays to watch the game. And it was something we became completely addicted to. So it was very natural to fall into hockey cards.
Wow, no, that's really cool to hear, and I think being able to play the game that you now love and collect, I think adds to that love. That was my first love. So, um, not being able to come back and play hockey, I think I'm kind of living out that love through collecting. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think a lot of us that collect kind of are in that same boat. Wish that we could keep playing, but this is our way to like be in touch and in love with the game.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I collected baseball cards. I also spent a lot of time at the Big O in Montreal, the Olympic Stadium. But in the era before these cable games or just sports channels that exist now,
Right.
it was hard to visualize. The announcers would say he's skating from left to right on your radio dial and stuff like that. And so you picture, the vantage point of where the zone's on the left and stuff like that. And they
Right.
had to be very descriptive, a Savardian spinorama and his hair is flowing and all this stuff, which is very easy with the helmetless Canadians back in the
Of
day.
course. Yeah.
And sort of, obviously I grew up right at the beginning of helmets and so on, but it was so visual to a certain extent in terms of using your imagination that at some point in time you needed aids, and my aids would be the sports section of the newspaper, and that's why a lot of kids who grew up in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s had all these scrapbooks and cutouts probably. And then
Right.
once we started finding hockey cards, they were just at the corner store on the counter in front, and you bring them home and the game's only on the radio and it might only be in French if you're an anglophone or vice versa. uh, you set the cards out and you could say who's in the penalty box and you put the card out and that person's in the penalty box. I mean,
That's
that
so
was
cool.
hockey cards were such a tactile, imaginative, statistics based as well, because that was
Hmm.
another gauge, which was, oh, he scored, and it's his, and statistics is very inherent to baseball in particular, but
Right.
hockey as well, as you come to know all the disputes on social media about who's the best player.
Hmm.
Roberto is the first, has the assists record for a left wing or whatever it is, but it's
Hmm.
very rooted in these visuals and in these stats, and that's what it was for me.
No, completely agree with you on that. The stats on the back. I mean, it's funny. As a teacher now, I try to find ways to motivate my students to read. I think that's something that is becoming tougher and tougher with the digital age, right? Everybody's in front of a screen and whatnot. And I say, well, I grew up learning how to read partly because of sports sections in the newspaper and the statistics and like the blurbs on the backs of cards. I mean, I think of 1990, 91 Upper Deck. Almost had so much of that stuff. And I remember
I, you
reading
know,
stats
I
on the back, all that.
I completely agree with that, and I'm overeducated, just because of Jewish mom. So it's,
Mm.
she won't be, if you're in the basement and you haven't found a job right away, the next thing you know, she enrolls you for another degree. So,
Okay.
I'm definitely over it. Yet I always hated reading. I absolutely despise reading, and absolutely, I mean, when Gretzky wrote his autobiography, I mean, and I think like even refs and linesmen. So when you go to the bookstore, if you're a hockey fan and sports fan, which section do you go to? You don't go to the novels, you go right to the sports section.
Right.
And for me
Right.
too, it was one of those things where, oh, I thought I'm slow at reading and I'm not an academic and stuff. Even as a kid, and my sister seemed to be the smartest one. I mean, I did well in math,
Yeah.
which is probably, you probably can tell from my channel. But I
Definitely.
mean, I just consumed books. I thought also I had to read in French because I went to French schools. So it's French novels set in Paris and stuff, really slow slugging. And then I go to the sports section, pick up a book, and I read it overnight. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
it just shows you have to do what you're good at and sort of work along your strengths, not along your weaknesses, where you just
Right.
feel like, quitting.
Well, yeah, you got to find that internal motivation to read, and I'm with you. The sports section is where I always went when I went to the bookstore, and I've made my way through some biographies, some autobiographies of athletes. I just eat those things up. But yeah,
One of
and I
my
remember.
favorite, by the way, one of my favorite ones was Agassi.
Oh,
Agassiz Open, and it basically says how his hair was falling out and he was addicted to meth and all this stuff. His whole book, and his dad was Draculian, like authoritarian, with one of these mechanical machine like gun, sending balls at him as a 5-year-old and just getting whipped by
jeez.
them. And I read, and it's called Open because he basically opens you up to it. But the book opens with a tennis match I saw in New York, which was his
Oh, that's
last
cool.
win at the U.S. Open, and
Hmm.
it ends with that match. And the fact this my connection to sports is so firm and so strong that I'll read a biography or not a biography, and I will have been at that game. I would have been at
Right.
that match, or I will have remembered that season because I invested as a human, invested my time, my energy, my spirit into it. So that's the biggest thing too with regard to sports is just that connection. I mean,
Mhm.
it's religion in Quebec. It's absolutely religion.
I can imagine it's as intense as any hockey fan could ever be, and yeah, so I can't wait to dig into that a little bit more, especially because I am a big fan of a player who played in Montreal for a few years, although it didn't go as well as anybody had hoped, everyone had hoped. But wow, well, and then did you read Dryden's book as well? I imagine you've had a chance to read that because I remember that growing up as a kid and being in the library and checking that one out.
Funny you asked that. The game I probably got for a Christmas present. Uh, the game I've read twice, and I have two copies of it because my dad later in life got me. He didn't realize he forgot. My dad was forgetful. He probably bought me that book when I was a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
then bought it again for me in my 20s as a
Nice.
hardbound book. So I had this.
Yeah.
So I actually have two copies of it, and I read each of those.
Okay.
Dryden is a must read. If the game, it might be the definitive hockey book.
Okay.
And I just in terms of because Dryden is not really exciting to listen to. He's a politician, of course. He's very cerebral to the point of insanity. I think the entire time when Steve Shutt is quipping all these jokes, one liners after the other, which is more my thing inside a dressing room. I'm just all about one liners, dry one liners
Right.
and there's a bunch of class clowns in there and stuff. And Dryden is just sits there on the bench soaking it all in and taking notes the entire time, just like he would to pass his bar exams. So,
Mm-hmm.
but the outcome of that book in terms of how it frames and it's just one of the most thoughtful reads ever. It's such a beautiful book. I
Awesome.
mean, you are inside that locker room, and from
Right.
from a perspective of how momentous and important these players are to each other in their lives and to the province and country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he was certainly one of the greats to ever play the game, let alone Montreal. So
I
I
mean,
I,
yeah,
I figured that was one that you had made your way through a few times.
sure, sure.
So, going from your just passion for collecting in general and getting into cards, and obviously with hockey in Montreal, let's kind of fast forward a little bit. Do you remember? Can you recall your venture into the YouTube world? Which is so prominent now with collecting. Do you remember getting on there and seeing people opening boxes? Was there that moment that kind of sticks out for you where you're like, okay, I think this is something that I would like to try to do? Anything ring a bell?
Well, so my mom passed around 2014, and right before she passed, I got into this. I My connection to her was so much through hockey that I got into this thing where I really and I had to. So I lived in New York. I was living in New York, and I came home because she was dying of lung cancer. And she's never smoked a cigarette in her day, but her father, so it's genetic, her father also died of it. And so here I was staying in my parents' home trying to take care of business and just prop her up and keep her hopeful and stuff. But there was just so much time because I couldn't work. I was completely lost. I was lost soul. And
Mm-hmm.
I went down to my childhood basement and I just pulled out all my cards and started going through them and started and recommitting to re-entering the hobby. I know I was in the hobby the whole time, unlike a lot of people came back to the hobby, but going through all my cards, it became this thing. I wanted to organize them. I wanted to put them in spreadsheets and all that just because I had time. So that was really it. And then with regard to the YouTubers, around that time, I was thinking, I'd like to probably start a YouTube channel, which everybody thinks they should do and can do.
Right.
But my thinking about it um, was not, oh, I just want to have a channel and I want to box break and I can do it better than these other people. My
Right.
sense was, I don't get this. They're just,
That's
they
funny.
fast forward through all the base cards.
Yep.
Why are base cards not of any value? Why are OPG fourth liners? That's the entire point of OPG, to have fourth liners who played 6 games represented.
Yep.
However, at that time, it was before Zero 11 and I mentioned Zero 11, but a lot of the time when I mentioned sort of millennial, mainstream, adrenaline, entertainer breakers, I'm actually not
Mhm.
talking about 0-11. I'm talking about cross sports. I'm talking about basketball guys who
Mhm.
don't have much money and are just throwing their life savings at it. I'm talking about baseball guys who've been on there forever, and
Mhm.
football guys. I'm not just talking about hockey. Hockey at the time was very niche in terms of the reentry to the hobby when it just kind of blew up again.
For
But
sure.
there were a couple like Andy Cards, who was an old school guy with dim lighting and a pretty crappy camera. Uh,
Right.
Cards Infinity was the guy probably in the
Oh,
in the mid to late 2000s that was, and he's a store, and he
yeah,
started
Chris
in a
Justice.
small
Yeah.
office, and he would do individual breaks for people, for individual clients, and
Yep.
he just kind of like a just he had really just a really nice, easygoing, funny personality, and I really liked him. I just thought this guy's the kind of hobbyist that I completely get.
Mhm.
And he rolled, Dungeons and Dragons dice, like just total geek, right? I
With
never
that
played.
big sword that he do too, the shing,
Yeah,
he's all the blades on it.
yeah, but I love the fact that he was randomizing stuff. So
Yeah.
already I was thinking mathematically that makes sense. And on the entire time when I'm watching all of these, I'm thinking about, wait a minute, okay, but what are odds to hit that? Why are we paying this much money?
Right.
And then the other one, probably there's two others probably that I kind of enjoyed, around the time my mom was passing, would be Black Sheep. Black Sheep is out of I think it's like out of San Jose or something. He's
Okay.
you know and you think he's a photographer, maybe for Sacramento, or I don't even know. I haven't spoken to him about that, but
Mhm.
he's one of the early, and he's this really laid back, just a with a really good camera, a good sense of photography, and he was one of the early guys who had a lot of views. And then there was Proco Taco, who's sort of a Toronto guy who I really love just because he was absolutely completely a hobbyist, and he played this really mellow, not radio, I mean elevator music, which is something that it probably was the thing that cued me on to, I just want to have music beds just to create a sentimental mood.
Mhm. He actually found me on Instagram not too long ago. Seems like a really nice guy too, Proco Taco. So he's
Yeah,
been
he seems
posting
like
like weightlifting videos and stuff. It's pretty
he
cool.
seems like a handsome sort of like a player who's actually is just super sweet with women. He has that
Right.
kind of vibe that's
Yeah.
just a soulful, funky like kid. I really like
Right.
him. And I also have this whole thing about Toronto versus the Bruins versus Montreal. But for me, people from Toronto, I always feel like it's like a corollary. It's sort of like a natural, to have rivalries and so on. For me, just it's a natural mix. I've come to super appreciate people from Boston and Toronto because I feel without them, there wouldn't be any Montreal Canadiens. It's a yin yang
Right.
thing.
Well, you gotta have other rabid fans to have a rivalry. If everybody just got along and said, "Oh, good job, congrats on," like, there has to be a little bit of rivalry within reason, I think. So that's good. And then again, I'm glad you mentioned Cards Infinity, Chris Justice. He was also my very first person I found, and I've told him before he became so popular, that he does all these streams now, and it's really hard to kind of get a hold of him if you really want to. But he's responsible for me like being interested in the hobby again, and many years ago while I was in college. So yeah, got to give him some props for that.
I mean, he also opened up boxes that are completely depleted now. So,
Yeah.
when you go, I pride myself in doing a bit of that. In other words, I'd like to think that some of the boxes I've opened up, people will go back and look at because they're the only breaks on YouTube. I'd like to.
Hmm.
It's not always the only break. I mean, it's once in a while, it's the only one you'll find because they're depleted. But what
Right.
was so great about him is that he was so early and so consistent that if you go back and you're looking for a particular video from like a product from 2007 or whatever it is,
Right.
he's done it. And it's, again, it's
Yep.
kind of shoddy footage, but I also like the fact that he's just straightforward. I,
Yeah,
I,
for
I
sure.
personally don't have any use for just like the anger and just the frustration and the drama and all that. I'm so
Right.
consciously not that for a whole host of reasons, but mostly because that's my all by design. That's the type of channel I want to be.
Right. No, and that's definitely what we need to chat about is if people have come across your videos, there's a significant difference between yours and the majority of people who open boxes of hockey cards. We'll just focus on hockey for now. But and that's what stood out to me. You know, when I found your channel, I wish I could tell you what video it was, but when I was getting back into the hobby, I was on my couch watching YouTube on my big TV, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool way to watch people open cards, because the cards are, you know, massive on the TV, so you're really there and a part of it. And I came across your channel, and I'm like, this guy gets it, you know, and like you said, by design, real positive, got a real good vibe going on, enjoying every base card that's coming out of there. And for me, you're opening products that some of my favorite players are in: Marc-Andre Fleury, Jocelyn Thibault. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's going to pull the Thibault out of this product, because I know he's got some cards in here, or obviously Fleury. And then, you know, it became more about the goalies from that point on, and learning about who you collect. But yeah, talk a little bit about like when you decided, okay, I'm going to record a box break. Like, what were some of the priorities going in, and also like the math that you include with the box breaks, which I dig big time. Yeah, can you just kind of talk about how it all came together, and how that is working for you so far?
So I think initially when I started, I didn't want to market myself. I'm so like anti-social. I was pushing because I saw what was happening to our politics via social media. So I was actually very reluctant, and I saw some of these guys just blowing up, but rooted in what I deemed without no messaging and no values. Just, I want to blow up, and I want to get people addicted, and I want to create all this hostility and drama and excitement, and just get everybody just with bated breath waiting on the next card to fall, you know. But which if you watch, like, I'm into the World Series of Poker, so I've played poker even as a kid, so I always was, you know, have a math degree, I've always been running numbers and stuff like that. But if you watch a World Series of Poker, yeah, people are waiting for the next card, but what they're really looking at monitoring are those little cards with those statistics next to them saying,
Yep.
he's got a 97, so this guy there's only one card that can save him, or whatever it is.
Right.
I was always
Yep.
conscious of that, because the money isn't, you know, no one remembers the pot size. You know, no one remembers how much money they're making. If you're a professional poker player, you're thinking about your process. You're thinking about, was my pot size commensurate with my odds, you know? So there was that. There was the element of, you know, studying the backs of newspapers as a kid, and the backs of the cards with the statistics. So I immediately wanted to ensure that there be a statistical element to it. But the most important thing to me was I came on looking to sort of create a brand without marketing it, and so letting it, you know, because I'm sort of anti just all this social media divisiveness. I just wanted to sort of provide an alternative to what I was seeing, which is just these adrenaline junkies targeting children and people in their 20s who don't have that much money, targeting people who have very shallow pockets, who have big families but working a couple of jobs. And it's ironic, because I'm more polished than in theory. I'm more polished than, you know, really, you know, blue collar or whatever. I'm more of a white collar guy. But on the other hand, it broke my heart to think, because this was really the premise. I once ordered from the card world, right, from Dave and Adams, and I wasn't very savvy. My mom was still alive. I ordered it, arrived, and I ordered 2005, 2006 Upper Deck Ice. So that is, I mean, that's a product that would cost $5,000 today. I mean,
Yes,
or
it would.
at least 2,000. I don't know what it would cost, but
Right.
and it probably cost me about $200 at the time, because it was 2005. You know, it was Crosby's rookie year. But I got nailed at the door because of custom stuff, you know, and it was really, and then translating it into Canadian money, it was a lot of money. And then I broke the box, and I basically got nothing, you know, like zero. And then I was like, wait a minute, why the hell did I drop $200 American plus customs fees on a product where I wasn't? And I went through the odds, and I crunched the odds, and I realized, well, the Crosby's number to 99, and I don't know the amount of boxes that were produced or released. So, but then I started doing the 99. Then I started, you know, analyzing it. Well, how how many rookie cards do you get per box? I don't know whether it's 2 or 4. I can't remember that particular
Yeah,
product.
I think it's 4 that year. Yeah.
Something to that effect. So, but then what I did was, you think then, oh, well, it's 4 on the entire checklist of 100 rookies or 200, whatever it is for that particular product. But then you go, no, these are to 99. The other ones are to 1999. So then you have to adjust. So I adjusted it. And then I realized, oh, my percentage of hitting that Crosby was like 0.01%. It was something completely disastrous. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, and I mean, the people will always remember how you made them feel. So
Mhm.
I right then and there, I was like David Adams. I felt ripped off. I was like, I don't trust you guys. Like, this is ridiculous. Why isn't this disclosed? Because in their little small, not even small print, in their print on the website in the description, they
Right.
basically, Crosby, you're gonna get a Crosby, exclamation point. You're gonna get this and that. You're gonna OV and all that. And I'm like, no, you're not going to get it. You're absolutely certainly, with 100% certainty, not going to hit it.
Not going to get it.
So, and then I sort of reconciled that with the sense of loss I felt. I mean, I felt a sense of a loss, like I'd been played. Like, imagine if someone put a gun to your head and walked off with $200. You would get home and you'd obviously feel violated. You feel thankful you came out of it with your life. But
Right.
what's the difference between taking $200 off of somebody in an alley and doing it in plain sight with a smile on your face, telling them, you're giving them advice, you should really buy this product because you're going to hit this thing. So I
Right.
think a lot of it's long-winded way of saying that I was very cognizant of the fact that online breaks were gambling, was entertainment, monetization, along with retailers never explaining what's actually behind the profit, whether you can have any profit. And this is before the cards had any value on eBay as well.
Right.
So even if you hit it, it had no value. So I've always been sort of really cognizant of, I honestly do not care about how much a card is worth, or even a box for that matter, unless the person who does it is disclosing what my probabilities are,
Mhm.
what just contextually, what are the odds I'm going to hit that card? How much am I investing? Like, if Ziri or anybody opens up a box, what's their budget over the year for the boxes? What is their source of income? There's income is probably monetization, because they get views, because they create all this drama. I'm not knocking it, because people will immediately start trolling me. But I'm just
Right.
saying that the monetization isn't because of the cards. I mean, yes, the market's blown up and stuff, but even that, if you do the math, it's just such a small subset of cards that retain value over time. If not,
For
a guy
sure.
like Jason Spezza's cards would be worth a ton. But
It
now he's
should be.
the next generation see him as a fourth liner. The generation after that don't remember him. He's like a
Yeah.
quasi legend. Yes, you can invest in someone like Ovechkin with 100% certainty, but you're talking about the all-time goal leader in the history of the NHL potentially.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of reconcile, unless you basically disclose how much money you've invested in boxes, which not all of which you've posted on social or on YouTube. So a
Right.
lot
Many
of
people
people,
don't.
I can also tell you for a fact, and I'm not going to call people out because I cherish our community, but I know a lot of breakers will buy cases or buy multiple box and only show their best box. And
Yes.
everybody will go on about how lucky they are. They'll watch that video. Kids will watch that video. They'll beg their parents for money. They'll go get that box and they won't hit that card.
Mhm.
Just like that breaker didn't hit that card
Well,
in the
of course they won't. Yeah. I mean, the odds are against you. I think that's the big thing. But again, what drew me to your videos is that, and I'm curious, I'll follow up this question, is like you said, it's not about the value. And it reminded me that even though I don't break many boxes because I tend to buy singles of Marc-Andre Fleury, which are not cheap right now, it reminded me that when I was opening boxes as a kid, I only cared about one thing. That was if I got a goalie in a pack. If I got a goalie base card in a pack when I was a little kid, that was like hitting a Crosby rookie. Like, I loved it, especially if I pulled, one of my favorites at the time, Tom Barrasso, Martin Brodeur, Patrick Waugh, like those guys, Jocelyn Thibault. Like, if I got them, like, my day was made. And so going and doing the few boxes that I have, I've gone into it and thought, okay, all I want to do is I just set all the goalies in a nice pile over here, and everything else is just icing on the cake, and I really like that. It seemed like you were breaking boxes with that mentality, but yeah, I'm curious. I mean, you've opened so many different products on your channel. Do you What kind of feedback have you gotten on those qualities? Like, do you get a lot of really good feedback of just your style of opening boxes with the math and the, being very positive and excited when you're opening it? Do you feel like in general that you've accomplished that goal of kind of spreading that vibe to everybody that watches?
Um, so a couple of things. One, with regard to the statistics I post and so on, I'm not sure and convinced that everybody fully understands it. I mean, for me, it's completely plain as day that 100% means you have 100% of hitting one card, and 300% means you have 100% chance of hitting three cards. But
Yes.
the other people, they just don't. Some people just don't enjoy math, and it's not presented in a way that makes sense to them, and they wish I would explain it, which I do on occasion.
Yes, you do.
So I do get a bit of feedback, but for the most part, the people who are with me get it, and they do enjoy it, and they do. And what they understand, what they enjoy most, is the fact that I'm messaging something specific to the hobby, which is be methodical, educate yourself, don't get caught with your pants down, and
Mhm.
go check out your checklist. I'll do all the work for you. Right at the introduction, I'll say you'll get 2.2 of these and 1.7 of those, and you have a 15% opportunity of that. And if you really think you're going to hit a day with the cup, it's only 0.5%.
Yeah.
So I'll put that stuff up there just so my thinking is, if you're a parent, right? If you're a parent and you have a teen and you're going to get them their Christmas present, I'd like to think that someone can find my video or know to look for my video and go, oh, this is what she's going to get in the box. Oh, you know what? He's not going to get an OPG Platinum. He will hit one auto, but the one auto is 75% chance that it's a rookie auto. And of those rookie autos, there's a 75% chance it's a no-name rookie,
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, well, there's an auto, but he better not expect to hit, whatever Zegras or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'd like to think that, and so I have gotten some of that feedback. I think for the most part, what people really appreciate is what you mentioned, which is this natural enthusiasm, which is this, and some people think it's fake. I've gotten that a couple of times where people think, uh, why are you making it seem like that's like, dude, that box was a bust? And I was like, if it were about money, I mean, I'm taking huge losses. I'm investing. I see cards not as an investment. I see it
Mhm.
as an expense, a sunk cost, just like going to a hockey game. Whereby when you go to a hockey game, you don't really remember your ticket price. You do remember the game. You do remember
Mhm.
often who you went with. You do
Right.
remember how you felt. You do remember the fact that you went to a game and it was one of these things that you'll carry with you the rest of your life, having gone to that game, particularly if it's a playoff game or something. I could list a bunch of games I've been to. So my
Right.
point, I mean, do you remember the fact that you bought two beers or three beers and a beer cost $2? So when
Oh
somebody
my
posts, someone posts, oh, that card's worth $3. It's worth $3 today. How much is it going to be worth in 6 months? How much is it worth? How much was it worth yesterday?
God.
And
Mhm.
meanwhile, are people posting, when they went to the game, are they also describing the fact that they spent $15 on beer or $45 on beer?
No,
Like, it's not.
definitely not.
So these are the things that I just don't find consistent. And when I speak to people, or people have comments, what they really appreciate is the fact that I'm taking the time and the effort to try to present an alternative to all these guys out there. Okay, Sportsnet, TSN, every single website that's monetized in relation to sports. Steve Dangle, who's a lot of fun, a ton of fun. He basically is this Leaf YouTuber who's on Sportsnet as well and on the radio. Right
Mhm.
at the beginning of his videos, it pops up, bet something something. I mean, I didn't say which sites they are, but they're every
Yeah.
single say. Cabral Richards, who's someone who I went to school with, who's a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, who's one of the sweetest guys I've ever met. He now, during the Hockey Night in Canada games, if you watch Hockey Night in Canada feeds, now has
Mhm.
a little sequence where they basically say what the lines are on the game, just
Mhm.
as a mean. And it's not, they're telling people, hey, I would bet this or bet that, but really what they're doing is delivering these people, monetizing the network through these gambling sites. I have this massive issue with promoting gambling, especially to children, and basically not ever stating that you're doing that, and just creating this endorphin rush for kids, to just chase after, to my mind, it's a hobby. They're called hobby boxes. The reason why I'm in it is because it's a hobby. I think it's fine if you want to invest. I think it's fine if you want to gamble. but this sort of acceptance that that's what the hobby is about. The feedback I get is that message, which I bleed on about to no end, to the point of, infinity, where it's just like, Fulton Cards, like, enough already. We got your message. That's the entire point of my channel, which is there's another way of looking at the hobby, and appreciating where the hobby's from. And that's why I try to open historical boxes to underscore that our connection to prior generations of cards,
Mhm.
to fourth liners who had a big goal in a big game, who only played 50 NHL games. They matter. They
That's
matter
right.
to their families. They matter to that fan base when it happened, as opposed to the only person who exists in this world is Connor McDavid. And
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of the hobby is that. And then watching other people open up boxes, and just their disappointment, not understanding the odds, being, oh, this is a terrible. I've had happen, and I comment on threads whenever someone opens up a box with really brutal odds, and then just gets nuts at, Upper Deck's ripping me off. I'm like, I don't think Upper Deck's ripping you off. I think you might be ripping yourself off. So I
Right.
try to. My whole thing, I'm not an entertainment channel, other than the fact that people like enthusiasm, and they sort of enjoy the fact that I'm enjoying, and that's a lot of the
Yeah.
feedback. I mean, that's the primary feedback that I do get is that. But I'm someone who basically tries to just demonstrate that our hobby comes from a different place, if you want to see it that way. And just based on the odds, we should see it that way, because otherwise,
Right.
and the people who do make money, I mean, they're expert collectors. Like Zeri 11's an expert collector, so
Mhm.
he will make some money through that, and he won't be making money because he hits cards in his boxes. Statistically, that's not how that works. He
Right.
makes it because he creates drama, and he's monetized because of the views. And
Right.
I'm not knocking it. I'm explaining that we have to understand that, as opposed to just assume that, oh, he has all these great cards, there's a trick to it. There's no trick to the stock market. If you go for smaller percentages in the stock market on stocks, in other words, big caps as opposed to small caps with a lot of volatility, the
Mhm.
5%. A lot of people say, if you don't, low risk or high risk, high gain. Absolutely wrong. High risk, low gain over time. Low gain over time,
Mhm.
because if you go for 3%, 4%, 5% with a financial analyst who knows exactly what they're doing, and understands how volatility works and so on,
Mhm.
those 5% add up to 100% over time, just like they do with home ownership. While the volatility ones that you get into, you have no way of knowing what's going to happen, and over time
Right.
you lose money. People don't understand those principles, and the younger they are, the more they think there's tricks to finances and stuff. It's not a trick, man. It's, you have to educate yourself. So I'm an educational channel at the end of the day.
Right. Well, I very much appreciate that, because I see a few students from year to year. I teach third grade, so they come on through and they have Pokemon cards, and the few of them like sport cards. I've given some of my hockey cards. When I open boxes, I get a nice pile of some of the base cards and a few inserts and things that I'm not going to keep. And I love seeing their enthusiasm, just trying to keep it pure in that regard. But I see them come in, and they're not like, they'll come in with this really nice, beautiful card, and it's not in a sleeve or a top loader. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to help this person out. But I do enjoy that. I enjoy the educational side of your videos, and I think that's super important when you're bringing
And
up.
just one last thing on that, just briefly. It just,
Yeah.
how nice it is to play fantasy hockey. I'm in a bunch of pools always, and to watch a
Love
lot
it.
of hockey and follow many teams. When
Hmm.
you do hit this guy who's like, so hit an RPA of some guy who's nobody really, based on, common knowledge.
Right.
If you've opened enough boxes and you appreciate enough teams, you know two things for a fact. One, you don't necessarily know what his ceiling is. So, a guy like Pasternak, no one cared about Pasternak in 2014, 15, and now he's one of the best goal scorers in the NHL, and might be,
Hmm.
historically. So there's that thing. And the other thing is, when you open up a pack and you hit some random card, and you just appreciate the game in every franchise, and you follow each franchise, and you even, to a certain extent, follow every home feed, because you're monitoring your pools or whatever. You just like hockey. I like the feed out of Colorado, and with what's his name, Rycroft. I don't know. I'm blanking on his name, but
Oh,
is whenever I hit a card from Colorado, Devon Taves or something, I'll be like, excited because I actually have an emotional attachment to everybody. So
Right.
it makes it so easy for me to hit what other people believe are complete busts, and then they flash the dollar sign and go, "Oh, that card's not worth anything."
Yeah.
For me, which is like, this guy's worked his entire life to play up in the show. I wish I could have played a single Zamboni rider game, you know,
Right.
up in the show. I'd do anything to be, an e-bug, an emergency backup goaltender. And these guys are fighting tooth and nail for their families, for the love of the game, to make it into the show. They make it up there, and
Right.
then some guys opening up a box, and based on the common sort of whatever it is, the helium of the day, oh, this guy sucks. It's like, he doesn't suck. He plays in the NHL, man.
Right.
I
No,
get
for
for
sure.
that.
Well, and you tell the stories behind the cards that you're pulling, man. That's what's also fun is you can try to learn something about the game. Like those of us that study the game, play fantasy hockey, kind of have more of a background on most of these players. I think it's enjoyable for us too. But for people who don't really know the game, that's great that you're doing that. Because I think I learned to follow Ilya Samsonov because I watched one of your videos and you pulled a card at him. You're like, yep, this is the goalie that Washington's going for this year. This was right when COVID kind of started up. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks for telling me. So then I look him up and found some cards and all this. And so that's what I hope you continue doing is just continue to tell
And
stories about
if
guys that
you
you pull.
if you connect with it, if you connect with the hobby sort of, within your heart, which for me it takes up so much space in my heart. Like I wouldn't even know what to describe. Like I'm not a religious person. I'm a bit of, I have some Buddhist sort of inclinations and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Jewish background. I have some spirituality in me, but if you grow up in Quebec and your entire community is at the time it was like barns, in these cold barns where you play hockey, and you're in the dressing room. When I was a kid, I was the first guy in the dressing room. It's also because I'm a goalie. It takes a while to put equipment on, and I was the
Right.
last one out of the shower. But that feeling you get just sitting in the dressing room after a game, even if it's a loss, because if it's a loss as a goaltender, you internalize it, you blame yourself.
Right.
It's disproportional to the rest of the players. As a goaltender, you take too much credit when you win and too little when you lose, or
Yep.
whatever it is, or too
Yes.
much when you lose. That feeling in the dressing room. And as I was older, in beer leagues, you'd have beer. I did play up until what is a double A in Montreal, so I played to a decent level. But I backed up Concordia for a bit. I was fortunate to be asked out because they're having difficulty with their goaltenders. But that sense and that feeling that I have is it's just so overwhelming that, yeah, I would not know how to behave any other way.
That's good though. That's good though. You speak about goalies, and we got to get to this part. Is if anybody watches your videos consistently, they know about the goalie mojo. It's like, hey, goalie mojo, guys! Like I'm every time I watch a video now, I just wait for that phrase to come out because that reminds me of how it was for me as a kid. Um, do you remember when you first said that and like what card it was? Because I am kind of curious the origins of. Everybody knows like mojo was like a term that was used a lot with breakers back in 2010s or even before. If something good came, but like for you, it means something a little bit different, right? It's just getting a cool card of a goalie. Do you remember the beginnings of that?
I don't. Well, one thing I'll say with regard to that is I was a little bit turned off initially by the term mojo
Mhm.
because it made it seem like there was some. I really
Oh,
hate
yeah.
when people say you're lucky. People say it all the time, and I don't mind it.
Right.
But in terms of reconciling it with my brand, and my brand just means it's an educational channel, and I'm trying to get a couple of messages across. And when people say, "Oh, that box was really good," or that box is really lucky. From my perspective, I believe that all my boxes are exactly the same because I'm really trying to present the odds of the average box. My box is immaterial, which is another reason why I don't care whether I'm very lucky or I'm unlucky, because it's just my box. You're gonna have a different box.
Right.
What matters is what you're gonna get on average, what you're actually gonna get most of the time, so that you know what the hell you're doing. With it,
Right.
so the notion of mojo, that there is some sort of mystique and some sort of juju and opaque, monkey finger thing. Like I don't, I try not to do that, except for the fact, for me, goalie mojo is again a sentimental thing. So
Yep.
I'm not emphasizing the fact that I'm lucky or that I'm unlucky. I'm emphasizing the fact that I'm a goalie, And the reason why I love the hobby is I love goalies. I love the way they look, especially their masks. I'm always, what's Flowers' pad saying? Oh, I was a bit disappointed in the ones in Chicago. These ones are brighter. I like them more.
Yeah,
I love the
I agree.
fact that he's called Flower and he can get away with it. I love the fact that his nickname is the same as Lafleur, and he can get away with it. And he can, I mean, that's a heavy word to have.
Yes, it
The
is.
fact that you're in a guy sport where it's all about dudes being dudes in dude soup, and you can be this sort of almost effeminate, sweet, like Quebec French guy, and just get away with it because you're compete level, because you appeared five. So there's this, for me, it's like this massive connection to Flower and to Dryden and all these players. And I like to emphasize the fact that, for me, the hobby, for me, my entry point, so much like your own, was as a kid watching Dryden. Dryden won six cups in like 7 years or
It
in a
was,
bit or something,
what-
which
you're
is,
right.
I mean, who wins 6 cups in 7 years? So I grew up with like this goalie with the simplest, and I used to have a poster with the masks and stuff. Of course, if you're a goalie, one of your primary draws is the fact that goalie masks look the way they do. And back in the
Yeah,
day, they were like, it was before there was, it was like a full mask
yeah.
and pressed up. I mean, those guys lost chiclets, left, right, and center. So when I talk about goalie mojo, I'm talking about the fact that, you know, I love this hobby. I love goaltenders. I'm a goaltender, and I guarantee you that the hobby loves me back so hard and so much that that each box will have a goalie hit, if not more so, and it's going to be just crazy because
Right,
is how much the hobby loves me back for just loving it unconditionally. I believe that
right,
love is unconditional. That's one of my most basic premises. If you have conditions for love, I mean, that person has to be taller and this person has to not say this anymore. And it's not really love. I mean, love is just like, it's just like, so I think it's probably that, which with regard to when I started saying it or why or whether it's true, I can tell you for a fact it is true. For some reason, I mean, also, obviously, if you think about it and you say it and you create this narrative, people are always going to like invest in that narrative and believe that
right.
it's actually there. But it's kind of ridiculous how many goaltenders I hit, and I
No, it's
don't.
more than usual. Yeah, and which is great though because I've opened some boxes and I've felt that exact same way. Obviously, there's no hobby god that's trying to give me more goalies than usual. I mean, one box I opened, all my parallels from Peachy were checklists, so like I don't even like believe in like that being a thing, but I tend to do really well. Like if you look at the odds, like you're talking about, and I know I'm going to get like these 5 inserts. A lot of times more than half are goalies. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. Because there's only like 2 or 3 goalies out of 15 or 20 in
Well,
that checklist,
I'll give you
It's
just
amazing.
I'll give you just a quick example. Was I opened up Upper Deck Series 1 from this year, and I hit the Swayman. I had friends online, friends from Boston. I have some really nice Boston
And
fans
he's
who.
from Alaska, by the way. I just want to throw that out
Oh,
there.
is
So
that right?
he is. Yes, he's from Anchorage. So I really, I don't like the Bruins, but I love Jeremy Swayman. Seems like a really good dude. And being
I
from
think I
Alaska
think I
myself.
think I read that there's another player too. I can't think of who was from Alaska. There's a couple of good players from
He's
Alaska,
one of
but
the good goalies, too. Yeah.
but I hit him, and someone was like, "Oh, I just want to hit the Swayman." So I opened a box, I hit the Swayman. So I opened a second box, I hit Swayman again.
Yep.
And then, that's the kind of thing that happens with me. No Cole, but two Swaymans. Like that's kind of weird. And plus others like a Thompson or whatever. The other day, I opened up the Gravity Feed box with
Yes.
36 packs. And I
Yep.
was like, by the end of the break, I was having a ton of fun. But by the end of the break, I'm saying, this is a pretty tragic box. Like this box is, tragedy, guys. No Cole, no. It's like 9 young guns. And then my next sentence was, well, 18% opportunity to. I'd already hit the Cole in another box, but only an 18% opportunity to hit him actually, even though it's 36 packs and 9 young guns,
Yeah.
10 if you include the canvas young gun, which is almost
Yep.
guaranteed to 75% odds. I was like, I haven't hit anything. So then my next sentence, as I said, is like, however, only an 18% chance to hit the Cole Caulfield. So logically, why am I expecting to hit it? And then my next thought was, well, this is so tragic. I haven't even hit like my goalie mojo. Then right after I said that, I
Yeah.
hit Hauser, and then
Right.
who was the other? And then I hit the other goalie. what's his name?
Wasn't Gustafson, was it? Philip
No, it
Gustafson?
wasn't Gustafson. It was like
Mr. Knight?
UPL, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's
But
right.
it's just
Now,
so in editing, I'm sort of just in editing. I just I basically put the video together, and just it takes a ton of time with the subtitles. That's why I really appreciate when people say, "Hey, I really appreciate the fact that you do all that work and you put the subtitles," because it's an inordinate amount, a commitment for something that very few people really do appreciate, because they really just want to see the cards. And I have to say that so many people who watch my videos who aren't subscribed. So half of the people aren't subscribed. Most of them come from these big breakers sites, and I for some reason every blue moon I get recommended, as opposed to, because even close to all the gambling sites you'd be recommended, gambling breakers, that is.
right.
Yeah, and I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, but the goalie mojo, man, it's with you, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy watching your breaks, because I know you'll be excited for goalies. And I mean, I think most of us that watch breakers, we're kind of living vicariously through them, right? I mean, my money's being invested in my collection, which I do videos on from time to time. But would I like to open boxes? Yes, but if I'm going to spend $150 on that box or buy that Marc-Andre Fleury that I still don't have, it's an easy choice for me. So I kind of do live vicariously through your breaks, but I also enjoy that you're looking for goalies just like me. So it's very easy to connect that way and get excited about, oh man, he pulled a Tebow. Like, I love that card. And then you talk about his stats or the picture on the card, which is just as important to me, or the mask.
Actually, last time I pulled a Tebow, I made some offhand, not negative remark, but just a little bit sort of interpretive. I don't remember what it was, to be honest, but it was because Tebow has a love-hate affair with the city, because he was trying to replace Patrick. But I remember somebody, it might have been you, somebody pushed back as a big Tebow fan, saying, "Really, dude?" Or
I hope it wasn't me. Maybe it was. It probably was, actually.
But it's just, if you come from Quebec, you know that Tebow had a complicated relationship with the city because of the terrible trade and letting Patrick go for nothing. I mean, completely unfair to him, and he's a fine goaltender. But I mean, how do you replace Patrick?
I really have a love for his Quebec Nordiques days, and his mask with the Nordiques. There's actually a video on YouTube where that I wish the interview would have been done in English, but it's in French. And if I ever learn French, I will use that video to learn, because he talks about his masks and everything's in French. But that mask specifically he talked about, and I've always loved the way those jerseys looked, and I certainly wish he would have stayed.
Tebow actually there are some products. I think the actual apex of the hobby was the early 2000s in terms of the variety of products and the price points and so on.
In the game was
which is ironic, because so many people were leaving the hobby like post 90s. But yeah, if you go back to these these archives and heritage type and Parkhurst type things, and I mean, just right around before Crosby and right around his entry into the league, is just, there's to this day, and they're not depleted to this day. I still open up those boxes, just an insane like breadth of products. And I was just mentioning this because Tebow is definitely in those products where they have mini masks, so you can get his mini mask, which is really cool. That's one of my favorite things, like these products that have like bobbleheads or mini jerseys or mini masks. The mini masks in particular are lights out amazing if you're into goalies,
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, and then all the in the game products, they had the mask cards, they kind of continued that trend from Pinnacle,
I love those.
Yeah, the Pinnacle masks. I mean, I remember way back in the early 90s, before they put all the foily finish on there and the Dufex, like the original Pinnacle masks, where it was just a black background with the mask. My dad put that whole set together when I was a little kid, and so they hold a special place in my heart. So all those mask cards, I'm so happy that Fleury got a chance.
I would also say one of the other love affairs, I'm just talking about my love affair with the hobby, but was when I discovered ITG and their price points. And they do these heroes and prospects, so players that aren't even necessarily NHLers. But and it's tied into Be a Player, which is basically the Players Association, as well as tied into Pinnacle. They had these early days of signature cards where every pack had a signature, like the Pinnacle. I opened up a box of, it could be my favorite break.
That was crazy.
I opened up a box of 47 autos in it.
I could not believe that.
I was like, what the heck? And I think it was my best guess. I have no idea. It was like a cutting room floor box. Like they just basically, but I don't think there are multiple hot boxes. I've never seen another hot box of that stuff.
No.
That stuff still exists, but it seemed to be that someone was just like, let's make a single hot box with all the stuff left on the cutting room floor in the, in the print shop. But like I opened that box up, and I started going back through the old Pinnacle sets, which had multiple autos. So the Be It players also, Upper Deck bought them at some point in the mid 2000s. So those Be It players that guarantee an auto per pack, or yeah, an auto per pack, or for the blasters, one auto per 2-pack blaster box.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of blew my mind. The fact how that, and also fourth line players. So that kind of like 250 cards, and then there's short prints of that, including like the Gretzky and the Brodeur and the Van Beesbrook, Richter were all short prints. Scott Stevens, and then so discovering that, and then discovering Between the Pipes, and Between the Pipes was the thing that made me sort of realize that this hobby is just so amazing in comparison and contrast to. So a lot of people run through base cards and don't care about base cards. I obviously love base cards because I love players and I have a connection to the story, and I think about their stats and where they come from and where they're drafted. I always try to think about when they were drafted to see whether they delivered or didn't. But the Between the Pipes thing was just a completely different thing. Like, it was the early days of finding a piece of glove or pad, and very little morsel. But that, and then the inserts were the goalie masks. And there's a couple of ones from the early 2000s that introduced that stuff. But I remember opening this box of Between the Pipes, and I was like, oh my God, how does this product even exist? Or why doesn't it exist anymore? To be the better question. I love that product, and I collect that. And I should, when I get back to New York, I want to go through one of my boxes with all my Between the Pipes cards, because I have tons of jersey and relic and auto sets from that particular series.
That's awesome. And they had a lot of hand signed, like hard signed cards in there. That
Absolutely.
big piece of the
absolutely all hard signed back then. Initially for the Be a Player, they were signature series.
Right. I really enjoy the complete package cards too. I believe those are from Between the Pipe, where you have a piece of the pad, a piece of the blocker, a piece of the glove, and a piece of the jersey or a patch. I remember getting a Tebow of that was just like, oh, this is so incredible.
See, Leaf does it now. I think President's Choice does some stuff like that. I mean, it's unfortunate that Leaf is, and it's I think they're out of Dallas, and it's what's his name?
Brian Price.
Gray, I think Brian Gray or something.
Oh, okay. That's right.
But it's unfortunate that those are so high end and so expensive. But they're sticker autos and so on. But I just feel, so many people complain about the fact that there's no Panini in the hockey hobby. Other people complain that Panini is such a ripoff. If you follow other sports, that they're a terrible ripoff. But that's how everybody feels about their particular sport and the licensing agreement that keeps everybody else out. What I love about President's Choice and Leaf is they found a way, without people's likeness and just with some sleight of hand. President's Choice alters the logo. You're allowed to altering the logo to a certain percentage only, or more than a certain percentage of logos altered. Like if it's more than 65 or 75%, then it's no longer copyright infringement. So with these little trickery, and then they, they have like Jack Plant, which is just like, what? Just Jack Plant. ITG had Jack Plant stuff. So, these are the things. And then some people, because they sort of wrecked and they're on have a social media presence, and all they do is bitch and complain about products. They complain about Upper Deck. They complain completely about the prices, completely about Upper Deck. And then they won't buy these other products because they don't have the licensing agreement. And I'm like, does the licensing really matter? Do we have to see the logo on a card to fall in love with the player? Or I'm just happy that these alternatives exist, because if they wouldn't exist, the hobby's already in such difficulty because of non-competition, because there's monopolies. So
no, I completely agree with you. I'm glad that there is still that option, and luckily Tebow has a lot of autographs and game used equipment that Leaf has purchased, so he gets in a lot of their sets. And
so you collect Tebow along with Flower?
So good question. When I got back into the hobby, I remember this right when COVID hit. I think a lot of us had time to kind of sit back I remember sitting out in my living room where my computer was set up at the time, and I go, you know what I miss? I miss hockey, and I miss collecting hockey, and I miss that connection with my father, because that was what we talked about growing up. So I went down the rabbit hole, and I bought a Jocelyn Tebow Select Mirror Gold, and I was like, these cards are so expensive in baseball. I was collecting Alex Rodriguez at the time from the Mariners, I grew up with. It started happening rapidly. So I went and grabbed as many Tebow cards as I could on a couple sites. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember this card from as a kid. I remember this. I remember this. His 93, 94 Pinnacle rookie with the black border. I don't know if you remember those cards, those early black Pinnacle days. But that was my first Tebow that my dad bought me when I was a little guy. And so I fell in love with the game more passionately, and the hobby more than I ever had with baseball. And I collected Tebow for about 7-8 months, and then I was able to get the majority of what was out there, reasonably. And then I remember, well, ever since 2003, Marc-Andre Fleury and the Penguins, like, that's been my guy, like, so much. And so easy to kind of transition to that, so I could have my hand in modern and also 90s, because the 90s, as you know, that is kind of like when the innovation really stepped into the hobby, when you started seeing all these technologies, printing technologies, come into play, and all these companies competing with each other. And yeah, my Tebow box is very special to me, because there's things and there's cards in there that I don't see anymore today, and I miss that about the hobby. So yes, Tebow was it, and it was my foray. Collecting him was my foray back to hockey. And I remember a couple people go, "Are you going to regret selling all your A-Rod cards?" And I said, "I don't think so," and I definitely don't. I met some amazing people, but my collection is what it is because I sold all that. So yeah, 2 years ago there was no hockey anywhere in this apartment, and now it's all hockey. So yeah, no, and Jocelyn Tebow too. I mean, you talk about the connection to players. Of course, Marc-Andre Fleury is one of the nicest human beings, best teammates you could ever ask for. But even Tebow, he's super, super nice, and everybody that's told me, oh yeah, I got to meet him. He was a super nice guy. He'll send you cards back in the mail signed if you send him stuff, and so easy to root for him and Marc-Andre Fleury. So
That's one of the things that's a bit disappointing about what's happened with the hobby is, I mean, is it rational that a hockey card with a piece of jersey this big and a signature is worth more than an entire jersey with a signature, and the fact that, so when we were kids, the only way to get an autograph on a card was to go to the hockey game, wait by the side door, or at least go to a signing. Like Bobby Hull always did signings, LaFleur always did signings, like, organized signings. But it sucks in a sense, because like I only have one Gretzky auto. I actually hit a Gretzky sign of the times number /25 triple auto. I mean, it was Spezza and Joe Thornton, who I love, is one of my favorite players.
Was that the redemption?
Yeah, it was a redemption.
Yeah, I remember that.
They ended up replacing it with Gordie Howe and I think it's Zetterberg and Iserman, I think is which is a fine replacement to number 225, sign of the times from SPA. But it just to kind of, the only auto to this day, because I've never hit a Gretzky other than that Gretzky. And one of the reasons a lot of people are like, oh, well, I know a guy has a bunch of Gretzkys that he hits. And it's like, yeah, sure. If you drop $500 on products, you're guaranteed to hit a pretty high-end auto. But if you're trying to pull it from like $100 boxes or $75 boxes, it's a moonshot,
0.001% chance, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. So,
like that.
but the Gretzky auto I do have is my mom basically had heard on the radio in Montreal that Gretzky, when he was in town to play the Habs, was in a mall in Côte Vertu. So basically, not too far from my parents' place in Montreal. And he apparently was in a mall signing, and on the radio they said he's there right now. And my mom heard it on the radio, grabbed me by the wrist, and put me in her little Vega card. She had this crappy, like, third-hand card that barely worked, while she was still in school. She went back to school to get a law degree, but she was still in school, so she had no money or anything. And we puttered onto and I must have waited, and because it's Montreal, everybody in the mall was aware it was Gretzky. He was only 20 even, so it was around 1980, 81 or whatever. I was like 10 or 11. And I had to wait in line for what seemed like forever. And there I was in front of him, and he had this. It was a GWG jeans commercials, which they call the Great Wayne Gretzky jeans was the ad campaign. And you can find these online if you look for GWG. You'll see
Wow.
these cards, and it had his autograph printed on it, and he signed on each one. And I must have waited. Yeah, I must have waited for like an hour to get to the front of the table in the middle of this mall, like near the food
Wow.
court. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget. He looked tired. He was really sweet. He signed for, and his autograph was a bit messy, but the fact that he's in Montreal, doing this, and I'll never forget that moment. But I mostly won't forget is the presence of my mom was a genius, one of the smart. To this day, I say she's the smartest woman I ever met, just an absolute genius. Her presence of mind and her sort of natural enthusiasm and bubbly, like I've eaten too much chocolate energy, and the fact that like immediately, like just, I don't even think it was a Saturday. I think it was like a Thursday or something, and she had work, and it was just
Right.
for school or whatever it was, and that auto I have to this day, and it means so much to me. But I always find it weird that auto has zero value, yet if you get it in a box of cards because it's pre-authenticated, it's worth $500. It's like
Right.
this one, mine's worth like everything on the planet, like everything on
Right.
this blue planet, and just worth some nominal monetary value.
Yeah.
You have the
But
story that goes with this one. There's no story attached to that other one.
right. No, but that's the thing, that you can't hold a value to a story and experience like that. And I completely, completely agree with you. But that's going to mean a lot more to you than it would pulling it, from a pack of cards. Obviously, that would be great to see, but I think the story's 10 times better. But I think it would be fun, kind of wrapping up things up here, last 20 minutes or so. I've got some like real quick answers and some really short answer questions. I got 5 each. I thought it would be really fun to go through and just off the cuff, without you knowing that they're coming, ask you those questions,
Sure.
and see what happens. But yeah, the first one is, you talked about Marc-Andre Fleury, so this is going to be a tough question for you. If you could choose Marc-Andre Fleury or Carey Price to start Game 7 of the finals or to win the cup, which goalie are you going to pick right now?
Ooh, I'd probably go with Flower most of the playoffs, but for that one game, it probably Price, because technically he's perfect, and Flower relies a little bit more on athleticism. That's a tough one. But if I had to ride somebody to the cup, it'd probably be Flower, not Price. But if it's one game, just like the Olympics, Price is just too technically sound, in his prime, of course, or last year, around last year this time.
It was painful. It was painful watching Vegas play Montreal, because they were so good up to that point. But Carey Price turned into playoff Carey Price, and Marc-Andre Fleury had a flub, which, I mean, everybody makes mistakes. It was just the wrong time. And
I don't blame. Flower's been to the cup 5 times. I can not blame him for anything. Even the meltdown when, what was it? Was it Joe Pavelski that got his lights knocked out and cracked at the face-off circle, and then they scored 4 goals in the last? He had a brutal elimination once a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I've seen Price play internationally, Olympics and so on. And like in finals, he allows I think in international play, his save percentages has been like 960 to 970.
Oh my gosh.
And his goals against has been 1 even in international play since he's been an adult. I mean, that's big game. It's just always been, we don't have any generational talent. So we have to. The only reason we went far last year was because we had the big 4 on D. We had 4 6'4" defensemen.
Yeah.
So we won a lot of puck battles, and the kids, and Cole Caulfield just had a coming out party. We're just very lucky, And we're also lucky that the Leafs and other, like Galchenyuk has never had any vision. He's not a natural center, even though he professed to be so early in his career. But he did a blind pass in OT that only Galchenyuk would do, and we're just happy that happened, because there's no reason we should have beaten the Leafs. We should have been out in the first round.
Right.
But Price was Price at the height of his game, and it's just, he's digital, man. He's like, he's like the game,
Yeah, no, he's
like a game.
Learning about the game, coming back in, learning about hockey once they came back into the hobby. other than my favorite Fleury, Carey Price. I was like, I think I have to. If you were to start any goalie right now, it would be Carey Price for one game to win it. You have to start him because he's so technically sound. So
He just has to do so much less to be. And I know, early in his career, one of the criticisms of him really early in his career, Halak was his backup, and Halak outplayed him and ended up, I think, winning the net for some of the playoffs. Or Price was injured, I can't remember.
right.
But the thing with Carey Price is he's perceived by some to be so aloof and so chill that he doesn't have the compete level, and that was what we were worried about early in his career. But
Yeah.
if he's fighting for the puck and just not too zen. I mean,
Right.
he's so zen to begin with, which is why he's so great. But a little bit like Binnington, actually, when Binnington won, it was very zen. Do I look nervous? Like. But if you're
Yeah.
that technically sound and you have a process that's so, when I look at Jonathan Quick, who has 2 cups and who's absolutely sort of athletic, like Dominator, and there's a couple of goalies like that. Flower to a certain extent, although Flower's pretty good technically as well. The thing is, Price doesn't have to do any of that.
Right.
When he's playing well, the most impossible shots are just hitting him in the crest. And by the way, he invented that, because we go back to the history of the Montreal Canadiens. The person who introduced the mask was Plante, right? The person who introduced size was Dryden. The person who introduced the butterfly, and I think Tony O and some other players had the butterfly early on, but the one who really made it go mainstream was Patrick. And the person who introduced absolutely perfect technicals was Price. One of my connections to goaltending is the fact that Montreal Canadiens fans and our franchise, Les Glorieux, we can take complete ownership of revolutionizing every aspect of goaltending.
That's awesome. See, look at these. These one little question came. All that came from. That's awesome. All right, this is just going to be a quick.
Sure.
This one should be pretty simple. If you're opening a box, whatever box you open next, would you rather have goalie mojo or Canadians mojo in the next box you open? What would be your choice?
I'd say goalie mojo. I think goalie mojo is just such a staple of my messaging, which is like, is because I mean, both of them underscore my connection to hockey. But I have enough Habs cards. I've come to love every franchise and so on. I think goalie mojo, just even if it's not a big name, there's something about it that keeps on. It basically says FultonCards. Yeah, I'm talking to you, FultonCards. I got your back. I'm gonna throw so many goalies at you because I know you love that. So I think I'd say goalie mojo. I have enough.
Okay. I do love, though, that you'll hit a card with really tough odds, like, a 25% chance or less, and it is a Habs player. I'm like, this is so cool because I know how much you like him. Okay. Let's just forget about all the noise. Do you prefer, because I know Panini wasn't around too long, but they had some really cool products. Do you prefer Upper Deck or Panini when you're opening boxes?
Ooh.
I had to come up with some tough ones for you.
Man, I would probably pick President's Choice, but I would probably say Panini, just because of the fact that it doesn't exist much in the hobby. So when I do open up Panini, I'm just cognizant of the fact that every pack will have a hit, and they're a bit uglier. Again, it plays a little bit more to my messaging and my brand, which is one of the key elements of my channel. Is I'm not ostentatious, man. I'm not an elitist. I'm not I don't covet cards to the point where it's like it's worth more to. I know at the end of the day, it's a piece of cardboard.
Right.
I covet my attachment to the hobby, and I covet my attachment to the game. And the card itself, I can destroy. I'm somebody who is not careful with cards because I grew up, watching. I mean, my mom had cards, and I think a maid gave away a bunch of all her old cards. But she once gave me a baseball of Satchel Paige autograph.
Oh,
Baseball,
wow.
that Satchel Paige. People don't know who he is. He's considered the greatest original black pitcher, and I don't know how much is, but she used to hang out at the Montreal Royals games, and all the people went through there. Tommy Lasorda, she knew, and Sandy Koufax, and all these people. So that was another reason that it helped me enter the hobby. Again, it's through my mom. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyway, so again, I sort of veered off talking, but Panini to me just represents something different in the hobby that it just. I don't know. It's just something that's a little bit more of an emotional attachment.
Gotcha. Well, and I've always find their products to just have a little more uniqueness. Like, just for example, Dominion, one of the coolest releases ever. Tough on
I've never
box
opened Dominion.
breaks.
I want to open
Oh,
Dominion.
you got, but they're so
One of my
expensive now. They're
Yeah,
so,
I
I would
know.
love to see you open
That's
one,
one I
but
want to
they're
open up. I think it's what is it, 2012 or 2013, the white box that I wanted to open.
yes, yes. But
Yeah.
within there, they did a set every year called Tape to Tape, and one of my most sought after flurries that I was able to find, and they're out of 20. It's literally and I watch. There's a video on YouTube you can watch where they do it with Ryan Kessler's stick, but they carefully by hand peel the tape off the card and then lay it down, and then it gets chopped up, and you can see it put in the card, and then it's signed. The player signed on top of the tape within the card. I'm like, that is so cool, and I wish
I
we had
love
more
it.
of that.
President's Choice has it's they're too expensive, but it has a bunch of cool things like that. I mean, to me, just the basic thing with Panini, it is just a constant reminder that the hobby to me is not about how pretty, and because there's something about Panini that just, I associate Panini with score, and I have people comment if, I think when people do like mystery boxes and stuff and they stuff in a bunch of score, which is perfect dollar store fodder. I've hit some great autos in like the crappiest. I hit a Chris Pronger sticker auto in a pack of score once. So I just think, like, to me, Panini, even their high end Panini, and I opened up, I think, Panini very recently, a high end product of it, and the cards do look really nice,
Mm-hmm.
but to me they kind of look like janky, and again, for me, that's why I'm trying to emphasize the fact that you don't need to have the cup, to enjoy
Right.
the hobby, the cup that probably costs $1,500.
Oh, geez, it's going to be. It was $1,000 a box last year or 2 years ago.
I've never opened a cup.
I haven't either, and I don't know if I can bring myself to do it. I would love to, but at the same time, you get into like, okay, do I wait for the Flurry limited logos to show up for $600 or $500, or do I spend $1,500 on
The
risk?
sad thing to do would have been to buy the 2016 or 2015 cup, buy 2 boxes and hold on to one, and then sell the other box to basically compensate for the purchase, whereby you'd actually come out without having paid any money because it valued. I have tricks like that. Sometimes when I open old boxes, I can pull them out of my closet. So I have the benefit of having sort of gotten some stuff from Steel City Collectibles that I just put in my closet and willfully and consciously forget about. And then I'm like, oh, I really want to open something today, and it's like, oh, I don't have any boxes. I wonder what I should go to the store. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I have these boxes in my cupboard, and I'm sure I have boxes in there. And I'll pull stuff out, and I'll be like, oh my God, this thing's for like $250 now. I pay like $60 for it. I'm gonna open it up.
Yeah,
right?
that's cool.
Feel real good about myself.
Awesome. It's good to have some foresight like that. Couple more quick questions, and then I got 4 like shorter answer ones. If you're opening whatever box and you're going to get like one really nice, game used card, would you prefer to have like an incredible multicolored patch, or would you prefer to get like a game used pad from a goaltender?
I think almost always pad. And again, it falls into the not ostentatious thing. I don't need to. Wow, it's got 7 colors. Ooh, it's sick. I'll say it's sick. If I hit a card like that, I go, man, this is a sick patch. It's a sick patch. I hit in a Leaf box. It was a triple of like goaltenders, and it was, including like the Plante, and it was just all of them were Rangers or Canadians, so they're just a red, white, and blue. I think Bursley was one of them. It was just so beautiful that I was like, oh my God, like it was low numbered, and I was like, wow, the Czech Plante patch. But I think pad, just whenever you hit a skate or a pad, because I don't buy like high end products for the most part. I mean, I do now a bit, but the second you hit a glove or a pad or a skate, or a puck, sometimes you look like an old SPX that pieces of
That's
puck.
right. That's right.
Like around 2000 even.
Yep.
You hit like a stick, a pad, a puck, a skate. You're like, okay, like
this is extra special.
This is really cool. Like a piece of skate.
Yep. That's exactly how I felt when I got my first game used pad card of Tebow, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I need more of this, because coming from baseball, there really wasn't any of that. Like, all these, how come they don't have an eye black, or like, like socks or shoe cleats. I mean, I know they've done it, and like batting gloves were my favorite. They didn't do many of those.
Artifacts does like number to 10, like what are they called? Like little, not patches or
like laundry tags.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or the old garter belts, the old garter belt buttons. They have some of those.
Well, yeah, the Leaf, they did those goalie buckles from the pads, and there was a Jacques Plante in there and a Vesna. I was like, this is amazing.
So
if it wasn't $700, I'd have it. So
that's why Leaf is actually special. Yes, they'll have these multi-way like sticker autos, which is incredible. I mean, you can get those in the cup. You can get those 9-way booklets.
Yep.
While here you have basically 3 autos on one side or 4 autos on one side, like 8-way 4 autos.
Yeah.
Sticker autos. But what the Leaf does is they will absolutely have a belt buckle. They'll have like a Turk Broda piece of pad or something. I mean, you have to really understand the history of the hobby to know how crazy it is to hit a George Hainsworth lumbergraph or piece of pad or a Turk Broda. Or there's other ones, but when you hit stuff like that, like I did hit a piece, I did hit a memorabilia from Turk Broda in a Leaf box. It was an ITG Leaf box, like Maple Leafs box, and that was
trying to think about that. Yeah,
because some of those products, the last card in the little container happens to be the extra uber duper like vintage one, like the cut auto. I mean, my goal really in one of those old products is to hit the cut auto. I did from President's Choice. I hit the cut auto of Dick Irvin Sr.
I don't think I remember that one.
Dick Irvin Sr. I didn't hit it. I bought it.
Okay.
So it was President's Choice. I did show it. I showed like 25 of my favorite like sentimental hits. It's in that video. But to have like a cut auto from Dick Sr. Dick Sr. is like, I mean, he himself played in the 20s, I think, but he basically played Canadians in the Tope Blake era before. So stuff like that's like, that's the best. That's the absolute best cut auto.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that would be pretty sweet, because I remember when those were coming onto the scene, you're watching Cards Infinity, and if he pulled a cut auto, you're just like, whoa, look at that thing. Now they, you got.
I mean, hitting a Jack Plante autos, you'd be able to find online, like signed postcards and stuff like that. Initially, we were able to find them for like $100 and stuff. Now they go for like $2,000.
Right.
What's kind of sad is there were all these like Maurice Richard like checks. So like his national bank checks or whatever his bank was, and his utility bills, he'd send him off the checks. So some of these are, voided checks that he'd written on. Some of them, I guess that they were able to salvage from someone salvaged them from when he sent them to the utilities. But you'll also, every once in a while, if you look for this stuff, you'll find like a physical check signed by Maurice Richard. And some people go and have them graded. So you have these graded sort of authentic, and for a while there, I think in a lot of the Parker's products, they had, or he did hand signing on the old 1994 Missing Link Parker's cards, which is a really cool set. And he hand signed them at expos or whatever. But then Leaf went and bought all of these, and then they turned them into cut signatures with a piece of the underlying Parker's card embedded, and then they sold those boxes for like $400, and then that card is worth $1,000. It's like, this is the thing that kind of annoys me about that. I mean, it's cool. It's cool to find it in a box, but the fact that they exist online on eBay and they're only worth $75, and then a company comes and buys them all off of eBay, then turns them into cut signatures, and then sells those boxes for $500, and then those eBay in the secondary market, those cards that aren't even the original cards are just a piece of it that they they put it in some sort of prettier card in theory. And then you see them for $1,500. It's just like, really?
Yeah, it's a bit strange for sure. I thankfully I don't get too caught up in that, just because my guys don't have cut signatures yet. When Marc-Andre Fleury has one, then I know that I'm getting really old.
I bet he does. I bet there is some somewhere, but
some kind of thing like that. All right, I got 4 more questions for you. Yeah, it's okay.
Pending.
So let's say Panini got their license back to just do like a couple of products a year, and it's a dream for me because I would love some competition and I would love to see Dominion come back. But anyways, if you could bring just snap your fingers and all of a sudden Panini made those 2 products, Can you tell me a couple products you'd love to see them do right now?
That's a good question. I liked Select was one that I really liked. Um, so there's, I, thinking off the top of my head, it's like Panini wasn't in the game for that long. I think one of the cool ones, like they bought the license to the old Pacific cards,
Yes.
so they ended up having the Crown Royals. So I wouldn't mind something like Select, which is basically like Allure. It's sort of like Allure, something like the Allure, but that isn't Upper Deck, that they can duplicate in those little funny sort of Rubik's Cube type boxes. Those are really
Yes,
fun.
right.
They were hit every. And what I really liked about it too is there's these weird sticker autos. I hit a Carey Price sticker auto in a box of that. I also am one of those, and there's Prism, and there's some really cool ones like the Prism and those triangular boxes. Those still exist. You can find them online. The ones from 2010, 2011, 12,
Right.
13, or whatever they were. You can find those online. But they sell for 250. But those cost $50 like 4 years ago, and now they
Yeah.
go for 250. And they're very mid. They're high, low end. So the low end stuff, the score stuff, no, obviously, but just that low, that sort of mid range. It's sort
Right.
of like a high low end is the best way. It's sort of at the lower of the mid. There's a lot of space in the hobby for that, and to this day, Upper Deck is going higher, and they're not occupying that space.
They're
So
not
cheaper
right.
cards, it can be sticker autos. Like I had a Freddie Anderson when he was with the Ducks. I had a sticker auto, and I was so happy. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. I pulled a Freddie. I pulled a Markstrom auto out of one of those boxes.
Zenith. Yes.
At
You
a
pull the
Zenith.
marks from out of Zenith. Yep.
So
That's right.
that little space, I think, is
Okay.
probably the one that I really like the best, I'd have to
Okay.
say. But obviously, yeah, the high end stuff too, which unfortunately I can't even comment in a sort of educated way because I haven't really been able to open up much of those products because they
Right.
were already in 2013, 14, and when I was really trying to look for these products, they were already way too expensive. They're like,
Right.
if you go to a hobby shop, they picked them off the shelf back then, and there was like $350. I was like,
Yeah.
there was that product that had one thing. The one product that I think I really wanted to get was it Dominion? It was called the Original Six, I think is what it was called.
Prime, maybe. I'm trying to think of what other
It
original.
had it basically had like Patrick autos and unless that was the ITG, but I think it
Might have been
was
an ITG thing
yeah.
because Panini, they had Dominion, and then they also did National Treasures one year, which was really neat to see them do that for really high end. But there was the Prime, which was really cool. They got some you've probably seen those like jumbo logo patches in those boxes, just absolutely stunning. Those were the three big ones, and
ITG
then
had also Forever Rivals. That's one that I really want to open up.
okay,
It's basically Montreal, Toronto, like Forever Rivals. I think it's just only
that's
Montreal and Toronto, and it guarantees. But again, those, it's 250 American, which
yeah,
doesn't seem like much now compared to the prices on the secondary market, and just in terms of what boxes cost now. Like
right.
Platinum, when it's released, is like $140, and then the next year they go for 190, and it's just like, Roku Platinum, really? Like,
It's
that's supposed to be a kid's product. That is literally like the Christmas present for your young teen or for your tween. And you're going to charge us $200 for a product with one auto. And it's a
yeah,
beautiful product with all the parallels,
it is. Yeah.
but just because it has the golden treasures and you can hit the golden treasures of, blah, 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 Zegris, or whatever it is.
Yeah, at the point 0.000001 chance that you hit a golden treasures. I mean, I put the rainbow together a flurry for this year, and the golden treasures, I don't even consider that in my mind reasonable or obtainable because somebody has to pull it, then it has to get on eBay, and then I have to beat out Kendall, who has like every flurry card in the world. So I'm like, I don't even worry about that. But the parallels are great. Price is too much. I agree. Speaking of Upper Deck, though, just trying to keep it positive. What Upper Deck product that you've opened do you think deserves a little more love? Like kind of overlooked. A lot of people don't talk enough about it. They focus on other stuff. Which one do you actually like that you'd say doesn't get talked about as much?
This is really hard. Do you mean contemporary products or ones that go back a little bit? Because
Ones that are released now, like on the norm now, or like once a year, or like annually. Hopefully, I know that things have been tough for them, but products that people would be familiar with now that are, you know, being opened regularly?
I'm not going to say Synergy,
It's funny.
because
I do love the parallels, but that's
it's
an
a
horrible
bounty one.
horse
The
race.
price points aren't terrible for Synergy, but it just, I mean, what I like about Synergy is just the fact that it's just so outside the box, or at least they're trying
Yes.
something different. I'd probably go back to Allure because I think
Yeah.
it's the only, and a lot of people don't like it. They just think they're cheap
I love
cards and sticker autos and so on.
it.
That
Yeah.
is the product too, where I did hit the McDavid number to 5
Oh man.
blue
Awesome.
diamond, or whatever the hell the thing's called.
Yeah.
Which was a great break. I'd have to say, I'd really say the one I can say with absolute certainty, it's Champs, Upper Deck
Oh,
Champs.
wish it would come back for just hockey, man. Oh, like
They
the
will. I
backs
mean,
and
they
stuff.
came out in 2008, 2009. They had it again. They had it in 2015. Maybe they'll do it for Bedard's rookie entrance. But I have to say that, another one I'm saying, it sounds stupid, but Portfolio. Portfolio
Yeah.
was such a cheap product. It had these wire photos. It was so ugly. I mean, these brown frames, and just like some guy like in a dark room, you know, half developing photos. It looks really terrible. But the notion, so everything I'd say and anything I say in response to this answer will be something that's low end, that guarantees an auto, that has legend autos in it,
Okay.
and then has rookie cards of big name players very accessibly, that are only valued at $15 on the secondary market. So historically, of course, there's been stuff like Beehive and when Upper Deck owned Be a Player. But I think Champs is basically OPG like on fleek. I think OPG, I love OPG, and a lot of people complain about OPG because they don't have autos anymore. It's not an
I
auto
love the blank
product.
backs and all that, all the crazy variations. Like
It's,
O-Pee-Chee is so much fun.
it gets enough love because people my age will love it no matter what unconditionally. But what's so special about OPG is the tactile nature of it. In other words, the different sizes, that they have minis, they have stuff V series going back to the 1930s, and then they have the playing cards in it. So that's the benefit of this low end product. But if you're like, oh, well, there's no hits in it and there's no jerseys, there's a bazillion products from Upper Deck that isn't OPG. OPG is, the auto I hit is like in their OPG plan, and is a fourth line guy. He's not even an NHLer. It's like, yeah, but that's what the odds state that OPG
Yeah.
is about. OPG Skittles, man. It's just tactile.
Yeah. Fun.
Champs is really like that, but because they release it so little, I mean, just give you a quick example about why I like Champs. In 2015, so they hadn't released it since 2009. They released it in 2015, which is McDavid's rookie year. There are silver parallels and gold parallels and they all sort of look vintage. The photos are really cool. All the autos are hard signed. You're
Yeah.
guaranteed two jerseys in there. The jerseys are relics. There's mini jerseys embedded in it. They're frame jerseys that go back
Right.
to sort of looks from the turn of the 20th century. And then the McDavid has, right at the end of the checklist, the high numbered series cards has a McDavid facing, I think, in the right direction as opposed to left, just as opposed to facing forward. And it's a super short print. And plus, I don't think there's an autoed version of that, but there's obviously auto parallels. There's autos of that card. It's card number 350. Actually, I hit that card. I opened up Champs and I opened up Champs, my worst break ever, because I didn't have my glasses on, and it was one of my earliest breaks, and I didn't even realize what I hit. But I hit Redemption, and it was the rookie auto
Wow.
of Connor McDavid, Redemption, and I didn't even. I was reading. I couldn't even. I didn't even realize what it was. That was just such an epic hit, and I don't even think it's the best card in that set, because there's this weird one, him facing, just it's a variant.
I love those things. I love the photo variations, and like O-Pee-Chee is so good about that. Like post game or headshot variation, or all those other. They just come up with these out of left field ideas that I think pure collectors love, and most people are like, "Why are you excited about a Fleury when he's throwing a puck over the glass?" I'm like, "Because that's such a unique photo. There's nothing like that out there except
Well,
that card."
Portfolio had like a normal checklist, and then it
Yeah.
had all these. They're just like these sub checklists, but they basically had. I think it's actually part of the master checklist, but they had then these black and white photos. So they had, obviously they had the wire photos, but then they had these black and whites. And what was so unique about Portfolio, that this is another reason why I like they tried it, and I guess maybe it didn't sell, or it was too.
Right.
Firstly, that box cost $30 or $25 when I bought it upon release. Okay, the Champs in 2015 when I bought it, when the prices came down during the off season, so during the summer the prices they initially were like $70. It came down to
Yeah.
$35.
Wow.
Those Champs boxes were $35 when I was buying them,
That's
and
incredible.
so and then like the portfolio, just the auto, it's just like Yari Curry, like it was just. And the other thing about the portfolio is that it had, strangely, shockingly, what was I going to say? It had these. What was I going to say? Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought because the cat sort of.
Yeah, no worries. Well, but I'm loving the
Oh, I
variety.
know. It had a rookie card. It had a rookie card of McDavid, and it had a rookie redemption of Austin Matthews. Name another
Oh,
product
okay.
that has rookie card of Matthews and McDavid in the same box when his rookie year was the next year.
Right.
So cool.
Right.
So cool.
I would love to see, because they're doing champs, but I would love to see a hockey only champs, and especially if they did it without the relics and too many autographs, especially with sticker autographs or even just one hand sign. I think they could get it done because
It's
you're not
more like
using too much
tops.
crazy technology.
It's
Yeah.
more like tops, like they have the Goodwins and stuff, and they have
Yep.
the Ginters, and so it's like it's more of like a baseball type product that sort of has this natural inclination to look back to the Babe Ruth type era. So
Yeah.
that's why it's so special. It is absolutely special. But I also like low end products that just try low end products. You know, try some low end
Yes.
products that look gaudy and just do it so that. But particularly if you're going to include an auto, and there's like Daryl Sittler or Lanny McDonald autos. There's I had Lanny McDonald auto in my Champs box,
That's
and
awesome.
I know you can hit those things in the portfolio. So I just thought,
Mhm.
just be more inclusive.
That would be nice. I mean, we all have our
One
opinions,
minute,
but
Lenny. 1 minute.
so we last question for you. Just and I'm gonna pull up a screenshot of your channel here for everybody to see. Um,
This is the other cat. She's a rescue.
so we got Flurry, and then what's the other cat's name?
This little girl's Pocket. She's named after Henri Richard.
Awesome, love it, love it. So kind of looking forward, even not just the rest of this year and past that, like. Do you have any goals for the channel moving forward? Or are you gonna continue, bringing that message, that enthusiasm, and enjoyment of educational side to the hobby, or anything else that you'd like to say about the YouTube channel?
I'm actually having some difficulty because I've always, maybe it's the Buddhist in me, but I've always not wanted to make it about monetizing and not make it about money and just let things grow naturally. This girl is really hungry. Yeah, I rescued this little girl from the streets of Brooklyn, and she was on her last leg. And to my shock, she's still alive 2 years later.
That's
There's
amazing.
growths on her. She has cancerous growths on her, and she's such a softie and sweetie. She can't believe she's like hanging out like at the Ritz Carlton with CNN International on the tube while she's wearing her fuzzy slippers after years and years surviving on the streets and almost dying during the pandemic.
That's amazing. That's wonderful.
I want to refashion my channel a bit to find a way. I don't know if I want to monetize. I want to kind of refashion it a bit to. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what to do because I feel like the hobby has gotten to a point where it's jumped the shark. And my presence, though some people, I see my presence with such humility. I have such a small following that I've grown so organically. And what I love about it is the fact that I have such a thoughtful community. I'm the only person, I have to say, that has really long comments, long responses that I respond to in detail, as opposed to just sort of trolling and like memes, sort of meme identity.
Right.
So I do want to change my channel around and find a way to maybe provide different type of content, or maybe have a different channel where I focus on something that again is more long form and more analytical. I got someone recently said you're like the hockey guy. You should expand. And I hope what's his name, Shannon, the hockey guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I subscribe to him.
Some
Yeah.
people have said that I'm probably more conducive to something like that and monetizing that way. So that and then the other thing is just I predicted that all these adrenaline rushes and all this focus on money would turn the hobby into just pure gambling, and it's exactly what's happened. So I want to find another way to sort of maybe it's time I really get serious about monetizing and find a way to make it a little bit more self-sustaining, because the box prices are just pure insanity, to the point where, I'm not negative about it, but it's just, is it sustainable? Does it make sense to be doing
Right.
this?
Right.
Also, be promoting a hobby that has become this, just this expensive. Like, my issue with the hobby, I love the hobby, but my issue with the hobby is the fact that if you think about the prices of these cards and how people are flipping them and what they're flipping them for, and what they're chasing amount of sunk costs, it sort of, it is not cognizant or recognizes, it doesn't recognize the actual value of a dollar. I don't
Right.
think there's any rational reason for a hobby box with one or two autos in it of generic players, which I'm fine with. I
Hmm.
love it, but for them to cost $250. I mean, that's the price of a decent secondhand couch. So I'm reconciling the value of the dollar, and I'm not seeing it anymore, and that makes me worried that the hobby's about to crash. And
Yeah.
I saw these exact phenomena back in the 1990s. It's exactly the same, and it's not just because they have numbering gimmickry, and they have, like Lafreniere. How many rookie cards does Lafreniere have? Like auto rookie
Oh,
cards.
oh, so
It,
many.
it's in the hundreds of thousands, and I actually still have faith in him. Of course, a lot of people throw in the towel. He's only 20, so
Yeah.
good.
Right.
Who knows how good he could become. Pacioretty wasn't until 24 that he became a pure goal scorer. But I just think there's something inherently wrong in our society. Like, shouldn't we be donating that money to Ukraine? I'm not telling people to have certain values, not take care of their families first or whatever, but it's
Right.
not. It's jumped the shark. It's doing exactly what happened in the 1990s, and no, not just because you have a card number to 50, and then you have parallels of those cards, and you have sub checklists. If you have infinite products and infinite sub checklists, what does number to 50 even mean? It doesn't mean anything. I mean,
Yeah.
so I just don't see the inherent value of these cards from a monetary standpoint, even though it's just speculation.
Hmm.
And speculation is just like the stock market, and the stock market, small caps that are being speculative are ultimately don't work out in the end. While, like, shouldn't that money be like, if you really want to make money, are you making it through cards, or are you making it by buying real estate near a subway line? You know,
Right.
like,
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about though is having a channel where you can, like the hockey guy, go into details about these types of topics, like food for thought, really get people thinking about it. I think that has a place because there's nobody that would take the time to do that because it's all about the adrenaline rush, and your channel is not. But I think it would be nice to see, takes from that side. I think educationally, I know there's a guy on Instagram named Batnob Cursive. His name is Ryan, a good friend of mine, and he has a lot of similar thoughts. I'm like, gosh, I got to get Ryan and you together just to have like a talk for like an hour, and we can just sit back and listen. Very similar approaches and thoughts on the hobby, but he loves the hobby to death too, just like you do. And so, yeah, hopefully, if you end up doing that channel, let me know. I'd love to give you guys a
yeah,
chance.
I'm going to, when I get back to New York, I'm really going to think about refashioning it, and maybe just all open boxes, but less often. But I'd like to I'm stammering and stuttering. I'd like to come up with some other means of exhibiting my love for hockey, but also in some form of education, and something that is self-sustaining.
Right.
Because just to be very clear, unlike the mainstream breakers, who they are. I don't monetize, and I don't make money off of it, and for that reason, I don't entertain, and it's circular, and I won't entertain only because that's not what I'm seeking to do. But really, it's like you have to find a way to make it work. And my premise is always, I make money by investing money wisely through my investments, and then
Right.
the money that goes into the hobby is a sunk cost, and it comes out of my entertainment budget. So I'm not gambling. I don't need to hit any cards to make my money back, because I know the premise of this hobby.
Right.
From the time you have a closed box in front of you to the time you open the box, the money that you paid for it, the value of the cards quarters. often more so. So I mean, in other words, 100%, you're only left 25% of value. But even that isn't right, because people aren't, you're not factoring in eBay fees, you're not factoring in the amount of time and investment having to go to the post office or becoming organized. Now, there's a whole bunch of retailers who do these things and do it for a living, and they profit off of it, but they're experts at it. They have
Right.
economies of scale, and they have people teams working for them. And a lot of these hobby shops, I know in Montreal, you walk into some of these shops, they have an entire back room where all they're doing, their entire presence is on eBay, and they're just flipping things and making
Yeah.
money off of it. I don't do any of that. I see opening a box, not me trying to make money. I see it as, I just paid to go to the movies, you
Yeah.
know, except it
Right.
costs way more than the movies now.
It
So
does.
I have to also, I'd like to start selling some of my cards. I give away a lot of my cards. I give away a
I've
ton
heard
of
that.
cards. It's ridiculous how
Yeah.
much cards I give away. But I have to, I want to see if I can find a means to make this a little bit more self-sustaining without completely, following the lemmings, off the cliff in terms of just being that millennial or Gen Z like adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
because it's not something I believe in. I really don't want. I want to find some alternative. So I just want to maybe find like Square being an educational channel, more broadly, even beyond the hobby, probably.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know too. But I mean, at the same time, I hope that you don't. I hope that you still open some boxes, because entertainment wise, it is a nice thing to come home from work. And when you teach in a classroom, it takes a lot out of you. Most jobs do, but for me, my mental energy is gone, and it's so nice to, ride the bike home, sit down, and there's one of your videos. It's like, okay, I'm going to enjoy every card that comes out of here. I'm not going to, sorry to the guys that I've done this for, kind of work my way through quickly to just see the cards that come out, because they don't talk about the cards. I just want to see what the cards look like. For you, I'm like, oh, there's going to be a story behind this goalie if he gets pulled, because I know he's in that set, and you know what I mean. So like, I think you have something really good and unique going for you, and not that you need me to show you how amazing you are or anything, but I think I would hate to see that go by the wayside completely, because it's for the kids that come and find your channel, and for people like me who just enjoy it, or people new to the hobby. There's something for everybody, and so I hope that you keep doing boxes from time to time. And I love all the stories you keep telling when you're pulling the cards, and hopefully you keep that goalie mojo going.
Hey, I have, birth, life, death, taxes, goalie mojo. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, man, like no matter what I do, goalie mojo will occur. It's a force of nature, it's an interplanetary force. It's going to
That's
happen.
right. I love it. Well, hey, I want to say thank you for taking the time to do this. I know that it was a bit of a reach. I'm like, I wonder if he'll even say yes to something like this, but it's been really cool to hear a little bit of your story, and what, the personality behind the videos that I've been watching the last year and
Thanks.
a half. So thank you.
Thanks. And I have to say, like, I mean, couldn't have meandered. I'm so unslept that I meandered all the time. So I'm thankful that you brought me back onto the topic you originally asked in each question.
Hey, no
I don't
problem,
know
man.
where it would have ended up.
It's very much like my life professionally, because young minds like to, oh yeah, but that reminds me of that, and that reminds me of that, and
No
now we've
attention
got a
span.
whole story about bears when we were learning about sea otters or something. That happens often. So it's like, okay, let's get back on track now. But I enjoy the discussion, and I
Thanks,
think you
man.
brought up
Thanks for reaching out. It was an absolute pleasure just talking about, cards.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah. Thanks again, and I will be posting this on Monday. I hope everybody enjoys listening to this interview. And if you'd like to get in touch with Fulton Cards, like I said, on his YouTube channel, you're on there, and you're also on Instagram. That's how you and I
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah, sure. You can contact me. You can message me on Instagram, and I usually do respond. I'll always respond. I read every single comment, so
Yeah.
I respond.
Really enjoy that. I think it's been really important to me too. Is people who reach out. It's good to establish those connections, and show your personality a little bit, as opposed to just liking it and moving on. So
Well,
yeah, thank you for
the other
that.
thing I just want to say, what to me this always underscores is we are a community. We can depend on each other, and it's a wide community. And if we keep the trolling over prices to a minimum, because there's so much of that on Facebook, there's just a ridiculous amount of
Oh, It's awful.
reflexive trolling. Oh, that card's or that jersey's not worth that. It's worth this.
Yeah.
Or dude,
Yeah.
it's like, forget about all that anger. Just think about why we're here. You know, we're a community and something we share in common. And community really is everything because it gives us our sense of belonging. And you know, it's a form of love. So thanks, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, if it wasn't, I wouldn't do this if it wasn't for the community being so amazing. Connections like this, that's what makes it fun. It's more than the cards. So, well, great. Well, thank you everybody for sticking around and watching, and we'll catch you next week. Have a great one.